Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in, everyone. Sorry for the lag. I realized I needed to go grab myself something to drink, and then realized animals needed water, and then I forgot my drink downstairs, and it was back and forth. I'm not walking around too fast right now because I don't know what I got embedded in my foot, but there's something in my foot that's doing bully you. I miss a bit. I have to bully you. Get to work on my VTuber. It's been years. Sorry, that's and now I feel like too much bully. and then now I guilt. One of those years doesn't count. Yeah, the rest do. Yeah. I've decided I need a dog bed in my computer room, and I can set up dog cam there when she's lying in it. It's the only way that's gonna work. Dog bed in your VTube model, yes. A commissioned a forgetful person right before major life change. Yeah, yeah. Stop chewing my chair. I know you're a chewer. This dog, I've bought her numerous bones, but she won't chew the bones. She chews everything but the bones. She's destroyed multiple cat toys. Cat toys that cats don't play with, so I'm okay with that. You need to get a Caro plush. Then you need to make me a Caro plush. Fair warning, she will destroy it. He deserves it. Hey, so long as he deserves it. Kira, stop chewing on my chair. Stop it. Stop. Oh, right there. She just wanted to chew on the levers of my chair. Leave it alone. Enough. Enough. No. Lie down. Lie down. No. Can't channel my inner master. I just need to stop being frustrated and start ordering more than out of command rather than frustration. Okay. So last time we read was 2 weeks ago because I forgot last week's Monday was a Monday because I had the holiday, so it just felt like a Sunday to me. But they finally got to chorus. They finally reached chorus, and Numair split off. Oh. Hey! What? Lie down. That's a good girl. Right, I need to turn off the cam. Right, I'll also trying to open up Rusty's retirement. So y'all could play along on that if you want. As well. Continue to connected. Alright, green. There we go. There is... Okay. Okay, that works. Okay. Oop. Doing. Wait. We've opened up a number of things to plant. New things to plant as well. Okay, so chapter 4, the Queen's Riders. Unloading the packs, they shooed the ponies into the meadow, and Dane followed Aniwa into the barracks. Climbing stairs, Aniwa led them through a door, painted a bright red. Inside was a big room with 2 rows of beds, 6 in each row. Taking a key from her belt purse, the Khmer unlocked a room near the door to reveal a single bed several chests, a deck, and its shelf of books. With a sigh, she dropped her packs on the floor and motioned for Dane to do the same. I'm not here often, but I'm always glad to see it. He opened the shutters and flopped onto the bed. Pull up a chair. Dane obeyed. The woman smiled at her. As to your future, I'd like you to stay with me. You're the best assistant I've ever had. If you don't want that, you have other opportunities. Alana would give you work, here or at Prior Swoop. Numair could do the same. Both of them say they'll mention you to the king. Dane shook her head. The road was one thing. People might forget their station in life there. Here, they'll go on with their real lives. Exalted persons like Alana cannot bother their heads over a homeless Galen. Surrounded by wealth and magic, Numair would have better things to think of. Aniwa drew a fat leather bag out of her purse and gave it to Dane. There's your pay, and the bonus. You can sleep here till you decide what you want. Don't be silly, Dane informed her. I'll work for you. Aniwa's face lit, and she grinned. Don't you want to know the terms? Dane had opened the bag and was gaping at the contents. A handful of silver coins and 2 gold ones. Did you overpay me? She accused. Aniwa laughed. You earned every penny, girl child. She ticked points off her fingers. You fought Stormwings and spider monsters. You found Numair and nursed him. That's besides what I said I'd pay you for. No, don't argue. Listen. The job is 2 coppers a day, plus room and board, and bonuses for you for unusual duty. You help me with the trainees, selecting mounts, handling them, grooming them, and so on. They get 2, so they have a spare ready all the time. But you know these ponies. If 1's a handful for most people, think what 2 are like. Dan giggled. I feel sorry for your trainees. Don't. They learn, or they wash out. You and I take care of the rest of the herd. In a few weeks, we all go to the field training camp. And we make sure the recruits don't abuse their ponies. You have lots of free time. Socially, you're as good as a trainee. Better, because you're trusted to know what to do with a horse, and they aren't. Don't let them order you around. Most of the bad apples will go home crying after a week or so anyway. Anya grinned. What do you think? Her head spun. Take the day as it is, she thought, making herself calm down. Tomorrow, I'll deal with tomorrow. I'll stay. They shook hands. You're back! 2 people came in. One was a shortcomer, her face broader, less friendly than Audia's. Her eyes black instead of gray-green. The other was a big man, taller than Numair, and powerfully built. His skin was dark brown. His close-cut hair looked like black wire. Pink, shiny skin like old scars wrapped around his wrists. Aniwa hugged the visitors. Dane, this is Buriram Turikam, Buri, commander of the riders, and this is Sarge. To the adult, she said, Dane is my assistant. She's young, but she's worth her weight in gold. Blushing, Dane looked at the floor. Aniwa! She isn't free with praise, Buri told her. A smile lit her face and made her less forbidding. If Aniwa says good things about you, then they're true. Welcome. She offered a hand for Dane to shake, and Sarge did the same. Dane was relieved to find both had the palm calluses of those who worked, and worked hard. Actually, Buri told Aniwa, We just saw Numer. Sounds like you had a rough time coming home. It wasn't so bad, Anya replied. Pretty uneventful, in fact, after Numer reached us. How are things? Same. Yuri leaned against the wall. The new class is ready. We'll start after lunch. There's the usual lot of soft hands, merchanters, and farmers' babies. A player, George recommended him. He's pretty solid, though he's tall for a ponyback. We may have to get him a horse. We lost 2 from the 3rd rider group. 1 from the 5th, Sarge added. Sitting on the floor, he still came up to Dane's waist. Half of the 1st rider group is on the casualty list, but nothing permanent. Plainly, these people had a lot to catch up on. Dane got up. Excuse me, she said. Anya, I'm going to look at the herd. Her friend smiled. Don't stray far. It's good to meet you, Dane, Sarge told her. We'll get acquainted later. It's just... Dane smiled and waved goodbye. She was a little envious of Anya, with her home and friends. She forced that envy down. For certain she didn't want Anya to be alone in the world as she was. Leaving the barracks, she climbed the fence into the horse meadow. The animals she and Anya had brought hung back. Strange ponies who had never met anyone like her crowded around. Heads were thrust under her hands. Colors passed before her eyes. Cream, dun, roan, chestnut, gray, odd colors. She saw stars, blazes, and masks, stockings, and the spine-long stripe called a list. Mares, geldings, stallions, all were the shaggy coated mountain breed. Now the ponies who knew her mixed with the strangers, bragging that she was their herd master. Dane giggled as they butted her with their heads and flicked her with their tails. There was no need to be envious of Anya, not with friends like these. Time passed. She wasn't sure how much. When a great bell chimed, she jumped. It's the noon bell. Dane hadn't realized the woman on the fence. Hadn't seen the woman on the fence. Lunchtime. She smiled. Or will you just graze with the herd? Her voice was low and clear. Dane grinned and disentangled herself from her friends. Nearing the stranger, she had a good look at her and stopped. The woman was dressed simply in breeches and a shirt, but she turned them into the richest garments ever worn. Masses of coal-black hair had been woven into a braid and coiled around her head. She had green hazel eyes set beneath level brows, ivory skin, and a full red mouth. Her proudly arched nose was strong for a classic beauty, but it fit her. Her only ornaments were a diamond on her gold marriage band and diamonds in her earlobes. But she didn't need any more decoration. She was the most beautiful female Dane had ever seen, lovelier even than Ma. The woman had said something. Dane wiped her hands nervously on her skirts and went to the fence. I'm sorry, Mum. I didn't hear. You look like Shavi Westwind. She mistook Dane's surprise and explained. Shavi is known for horse magic. She's a goddess where I come from. One of the 4 horse lords. Anya told me. Beyond Northwind, Shai Southwind, Thou Eastwind, and Shavi. But they're Khmeri gods. Excuse my saying so, but you don't look Khmeri. The woman fingered the arch of her nose. There's bad blood in my family. I'm half Khmer, anyways. You're a friend of Anya's? I work for her. The hazel eyes sharpened. You're Dane. With a smile, she explained. Word travels fast here. You'll get used to it. She offered a small, delicate hand, shaking it. Dane found calluses on the soft palm and smiled with relief. For a moment, she'd been afraid she was talking to some kind of noble. She had never met a noble apart from the lioness, and she wasn't sure she wanted to. What should What would she say to one? Let's go eat, the woman told her. I'm starving. You must be too. Jane climbed the fence. I think the whole city knows my name, she grumbled as they set off down toward the barracks. Did you tell me yours? No, it's Thayet. The queen? Only when I can't avoid it, said Thayet after a tall. Please don't get all formal with me now. You're having such a nice talk. Dane scowled. Odds bobs. It's a strange place. Knights who say call them by their first name, and wizards that light tinder and queens that run around dressed like real people. Thayet laughed. No wonder Alana knew Mare like you. You have a very unusual way of looking at things. Dane blushed. I'm sorry, I just so confused here. That's normal, the queen assured her. I felt the same once. They entered the barracks. Some lunch will make you feel better. She steered Dane through a door and into chaos. This room was filled with long wooden tables and benches. A third of them were occupied by men and women in their late teens and early 20s, who created enough noise to fill the place. Dane copied Thayet as the queen picked up a wooden tray and went to the servers at the back of the room. These people confirmed the woman's identity. Each bobbed respectfully and called her Majesty. As they put bread, cheese, bowls of stew, fruit, and mugs of cider on her tray and Dane's. Thayet, there you are. Sorry, I was just doing something really quick. Okay. Thayet, there you are. Fury came up as they left the servers. We've been looking for you. Aniwa says she and Dane here met up with Stormwings and some kind of spiders with human heads. Talking, she led the queen to a table at the head of this room where Anya and Sarge waited. Aniwa beckoned to Dane, but the girl didn't want to be there under the eyes of everyone. Shaking her head, she went to the corner of an unoccupied table and sat with her lunch. I'm younger than anyone here, she thought, buttering a roll. How can I make them mind what I say about the horses? The girl sat down across from her. Hello. She had dark hair, cut boyishly short, and a pair of dancing green eyes, with a tilted nose, a cleft chin, and a dusting of freckles. She looked like pure mischief. I'm Miri. Are you a new trainee? Dane shook her head. I work for Aniwa, the horse mistress. I'll be helping you with the ponies, I guess. Good. We need more girls. There are too many boys. Miri stuck her tongue out at the tall blonde youth who settled his tray beside Dane. He smiled. Do you mind if I sit here? She shook her head. He had a very kind smile and bright blue eyes. Evan Lars. He sat and offered a hand. Dane accepted it. Dane Sarastri. He reached for her ear and seemed to pull out a roll out of it. Didn't wash this morning, did you? He smeared cheese on the roll and grinned at Dane's open-mouthed surprise. My family's player folk, he explained. I have all sorts of useless talents. She's going to help us with the ponies, Mary said. I need all the help I can get, she informed Dane. Up until 2 weeks ago, I could count on one hand the amount of times I've been on a horse. You're doing fine, Evan told her soothingly. He looked at Dane. She's been grooming and riding up at the palace stables. The ponies are different, but these ponies are different, Mary protested. You heard Sarge. They're picked to be fussy and mean, and they bite. Dane grinned. They're not so bad. Me and Aniwa brought some down from Gala, and I've been with the herd. There's nice ones. You'll see. Looking around, she thought that the last time she'd seen such a mixed herd of humans was at the fair in Kriya. There were 2 other blacks, 3 very brown youths, and 5 more as blonde, pale-skinned, and blue-eyed as Scanrans. The rest could have come from any of the realms around the River Drell. You look overwhelmed, Evan told her. They're just trainees, like Miri and me. Yes, but what does it take to be a trainee? She asked. How did you 2 join up, if you don't mind me asking? Oh, joining's the easy part, Miri said. They post the rules in all the schools and at recruiting stations in the towns. You have to be 15 or more, Evan said. Healthy, with all your body parts still attached. No missing hands or eyes. Single, added Miri. No spouse and children. Helps if you ride, but it's not required. They took me. And the only thing I ever rode in my life was a fishing boat. That's what my people do. Fish. You need good reflexes, Evan went on. You have to read and write. For Tartalans, that's no problem. Schools have been open to everyone for 9 years now. For the ones that can't read, the riders will give you work in the palace till you learn. I think that's all. Oh, and you have to be here by March full moon. That's when training starts every year. That's all? Jane asked, shocked. That doesn't seem like much. It isn't, said Evan. The problem isn't getting into the riders. It's staying. We've lost 10 in the last 2 weeks. Sick. Wouldn't take orders. Couldn't handle the schedule. We'll lose more by summer's end. Sarge rose in thunder. Listen up, darlings. Today's your last day of fun at the king's expense. He calls running us around the meadows every day. Fun, Mary whispered to Dane. Here's Aniwa, our horse mistress. Aniwa stood and nodded to everyone. Dane, stand up, girl. She obeyed. Is her assistant. Dane sat when Aniwa did. They brought the rest of the ponies we need. Sarge went on. So we're ready to start the real work. You have till the bells chime 1 stroke to do what needs doing. At the bell, come to the horse meadow. He clapped his hands. Don't sit there gawping, children. You pick your mounts today. Get those trays to the kitchen and get out of here. Aniwa took Dane aside. What about sleeping arrangements? I could put a cot for you in my room, or a storeroom, or you can sleep with the trainee girls. Your choice. Please, horse mistress. It was Mary. Nobody minds. Dane can bunk with me. If you want to, Dane. Dane thought it over and nodded. Fine, Aniwa said. After supper, you can show Dane the bed. Would you excuse us now, though? I want to ask her something. The girl nodded and raced upstairs. Aniwa and Dane followed at a slower pace. I'm glad you're making friends, the Chimera said. It's good for you to meet people your own age. Listen. I have to ask, she pointed to Dane's skirts. Doesn't that outfit get hot? She'd hit on the burden of Dane's life. The girl scowled. The litany she'd given Ma and Granda for years bubbled to her lips. Hot in summer, cold in winter, always getting tangled and ripped and soaked. Clumsy, heavy. Aniwa smiled. She knew an old grievance when she heard one. Then why wear 'em? Get yourself breeches and a shirt like me. Dane gaped at her. Men's gear? With folk talking about me as all the time as is? Aniwa shook her head. You're not home now. The rules have changed. Dane opened her mouth to object, then closed it. She looked at her skirts to be rid of them, and the petticoats. It hit her. Really hit her that she was free of Snowsdale. What could they do to her now? From what Evan and Miri said, rioters came from all walks of life. In Gala, she was strange. Here, everyone was different. these people wouldn't care if Ma was a hedge witch. Maybe they wouldn't even care that her father was unknown. Someone her Ma met one Beltane night and never saw again. But they'll care if they know you went mad, a tiny voice inside her cautioned. Best keep shut about that. Aniwa let her think, and was rewarded when Dane's blue-grey eyes shone like lanterns. I'd love to put on breeches. Come on then. Aniwa took her out of the girls' dormitory and down the hall. That's men's country, she said, pointing to the bright yellow door. Off limits to females, like we're off limits to them. In the supply room, a tall woman with red bronze hair and great kindness in her face looked up from her desk. Aniwa, welcome. She came over to hug the Khmer. Your assistant? She asked. Dane, this is Curry Taylor. She's in charge of the girls. If there's anything you need, Curry's the woman to ask. Aniwa hugged Dane around the shoulders. Curry, she needs breeches and shirts. Dane, I hate to rush, but I need to talk with Sarge. You'll be alright? The girl nodded. When you're done, come out to the meadow and we'll get these two leggers mounted. She left the room. The first day or so is crazy, explained Curry. They always start as soon as Aniwa comes, so she has to move fast. You'll be rushing too, once the riders see how much work they can get from you. My word on it. She measured Dane quickly and wrote down her findings. I'll have others tonight, but take these for now. From stacks of homespun garments on one side of the room, she chose a pair of worn breeches and a patched white shirt. No use wearing good clothes when you're with the horses, she explained. Step behind that screen and try these on. Let's see how they fit. Behind the screen, Dane drew the shirts and breeches on with trembling hands. Doubtless the trainee girls were used to such things. She had seen they all wore breeches. But she was a little scared. Dressed, she stepped out into the open. What's the matter? Curry walked over to tug and adjust the garments. It's men's gear, she explained shyly. At home, the priests and the headmen, they never approve. Forget them. Curry turned her, checking the clothes. You're ours now. I'm not saying there won't be people who to carp and pinch at you. That's human nature, alas. Dane nodded. She knew. But here, life's what you make it. Who you used to be doesn't matter. Look at Sarge. He was a slave once. Aniwa was beaten by her husband and left to die. Her Majesty and Commander Bury had to flee Serene. Do you catch my drift? It was a lot to digest. Aniwa? It was impossible to think of Aniwa as beaten and abandoned by anyone. And Sarge? I think so. Hellish bells chimed one stroke, making Dane jump. The bells get ticking. I'm mixing up my words. The bells take getting used to, the woman informed her with a sigh. How often do they ring? The girl asked, pulling on her boots. Every hour until late in the evening. Curry smiled. All set? Yes'm. Dane grinned at her. Thank you. Welcome to chorus, dear, the woman said as Dane ran out the door. Aniwa, Bury, and Sarge waited at the fence with a barrel of apples. Dane arrived just as Aniwa stuffed fruit into every pocket Mary had. Bribe them, she said, and shooed the reluctant girl through the gate Sarge held open. What do I do? Dane asked. Use your instincts. Aniwa watched the field as she spoke. You have to make your own authority with the trainees. Not that I think that will be a problem. Just keep an eye out. Remember, they have to pick two. One for morning, one for afternoon, Sarge added with a grin. It was one thing to say, make your own authority, another to start doing it. The moment Dane watched, most trainees met the ponies cautiously or easily depending on their natures. A mouse gray mare twined around Evan as if she were a cat. Looking for Miri, she saw trouble. Some of the more wicked animals had gone to torment the girl, who was plainly scared. Stopping an arm's reach from her, they frolicked, showing more tooth and hoof than was necessary. This won't do, Dane thought, jumping down into the meadow. She bore down on the mischief makers with a scowl, Cloud following like a lonely dog. Stop that, she ordered. What would your ma's say? If they saw you acting bad, shame on you, scat. Don't come back until you've learned manners. The ponies shook their heads, looking properly ashamed, and fled. If she wanted to be a rider, she ought to know how to ride, a female voice muttered. Dane looked for the source, but none of the nearby trainees met her eyes. At home, only lords or couriers ride, Murray explained, shamefaced. I've been practicing. It's just, there's so many, and they're so risky. Jane put a hand on her shoulder. Her new friend was solid, muscular, with a love of life she could almost feel. Look, there are some you'll like. She pointed to a cluster of ponies milling around the tree in the open meadow. I'd have to go through the herd, the older girl whispered. Jane stuck her hands in her pocket. See how you keep to the fence because you're shy? I didn't think shy was the right word, Mary confessed. Hush. Those ponies are nice, but they're shy too. If you want to meet them, you have to do the walking. They're just animals. They can't know you've kept to the fence because you're shy. It can't be worse than sailing through a storm, Evan said from nearby. I only did that once. Mary looked at the herd and the shy ponies, swallowed, and walked forward. Dane and Cloud followed her to the tree. Here, boy. The pony Dane beckoned forward was a gelding. His body hairs a mixture of black and white. His mane, tail, face, and socks black. I want you to meet someone. The pony sidled around until he was behind Dane, peering at her human friend. This fellow is what we call a blue roan. We came south together. Dane looked over her shoulder. Come out here and meet Miri. If you ask nice, she might give you an apple. The roan's ears pricked forward at the word apple. Carefully, he emerged from behind Dane to approach the older girl. He's beautiful. Timidly, Mary offered him a fruit. Within seconds, it was gone, and he was inspecting her pockets for more. Dane instructed, a blow in his nostrils, gentle-like. It's how you get acquainted. It seems rude to me. Mary obeyed and giggled when the blue returned the courtesy. You know, they aren't as scary as I thought. Animals are easy to understand, Dane told her. You just have to know how to talk to them. You talk to them like they really are people. Mary smiled as the roan leaned into her hand. Don't say it's like I have magic, Dane said. I hear it all the time and it makes me crazy. Depends on what you mean, Mary commented. The sea is full of magic, but we can't use it like a gift. It isn't the same. My uncle is a wave speaker. He swims with dolphins. He talks to them. Whole conversations. Have an apple, she told a tan mare who had come near. The pony took one daintily. Soon, they were breathing on into each other's faces. Walk with them a bit, Evan suggested, joining them. The reins he held belonged to the mouse gray mare and to a tall stallion, cream-colored beauty with a white mane and tail. Dane, what do you think? She went over both. Evan had chosen well. They were tall for ponies, which meant they would suit his long legs. The stallion was a showy, life-loving fellow, reflecting the player's extravagance of character. The mare was smitten with him, matching the sweetness that lay close to Evan's bones. You got lucky. She said when she was done, this pair will do anything for you, if you handle them right. Evan grinned. I'm glad you approve. Another trainee called her for help, a redheaded youth named Padrak. She gave it to him, then to another. Before she knew it, the afternoon was gone. And the trainees were taking their new mounts to the stables for grooming. Dane, Anua, Buri, and Sarge helped then too. Though Dane couldn't see how she could ever be comfortable telling a 20-year-old man he was missing spots on the pony he was grooming. She did try it. Excuse me, trainee. What did you say your name was? Blue-gray eyes twinkled at her over his cream-colored mare's back. I didn't. It's Ferrand. His blonde hair curled thickly over his head, almost matching the pony's in color. Thank you, Trainee Ferrand. Your missing spots. Not at all, sweetheart. I'm just combing too fast for you to see. Trainee Ferrand, your missing spots. Sarge boomed just behind Dane. She thought later she might actually have levitated at the moment. Certainly Ferrand had. Next time the assistant horse mistress tells you something, don't flirt. Correct it. He moved on, and Dane pressed her hands against her burning cheeks. Ferrand leaned on his mare and sighed. Yes, assistant horse mistress, right away. He winked at her and went back to work. Dane went to Sarge as the trainees were finishing out. Sarge, He shook his head. Dane thought if he leaned against the stable wall any harder, it would collapse. How did a human without bear blood in him get to be so large? Not your fault. These city boys see you. You're young, sweet looking. He winked at her. They're gonna try to take advantage. If they can't keep their minds on the job after I have had them 2 weeks already in my patty paws, then I ain't been doing my job right. His grin was wolfish. But that can be fixed. Seeing her open mouth stare, he asked, Something the matter, my lamb? She closed her jaw. No, sir. I just never met nobody like you. And if you're lucky, you won't again. Wait, I just realized it was Buri, not Sarge. And if you're lucky, you won't again, muttered Buri, passing by. Wait, am I still there? Yes, I'm still there. Foppin's just missing. There we go. Steal. Someday. It is still in early access. After the stables, there was a bath, a hot one. Bathing with the other females in a tub as large as a pond would take getting used to, Dane thought, but at least she had plenty of soap and shampoo. Dressed in clean clothes, she went to the mess hall, where Evan and Miri waved for her to join them. She noticed there was much less talk than at lunch. Afterward, the trainees cleared and scrubbed the tables, and Curry went to the head of the room. Buri and Sarge were moving a map of Tortal into place behind her as she laid bundles of plants onto the table before her. Tonight's it's medicinal herbs, she told them, and the trainees groaned. She smiled. That's not so bad. Remember last week I was teaching you how to sew your own cuts without anything to numb the pain. Dane saw Anua slip out the back and followed. Do I have to stay? No, indeed not. You aren't a trainee. You can help me unpack. That sounded like something she could get her exhausted muscles and brain to do. She followed Anua to the stables, up the stairs to her room. Do they have to study all the time? She sat on the bed while the Chimera opened her packs. Those in the pile by the door. Don't get up, just throw them. Packages on the bed next to you. Hand me scrolls and papers. Jane hoisted a pack into her lap and went to work. Well, they have to get their book learning now while they're here. They won't have much time once we head to the summer training site. You'll like the one this year. Pirate Swoop. Jane's face lit. Lady Alana's home? The very same. Turning to the subject on her mind, she asked, what do they study, the trainees? Anua numbered the topics in her fingers. Poisons, medicines, edible plants, tracking and hunting, all terrains, reading maps, drawing them. Maps here are a lot more accurate now that the riders help draw them. Battle tactics, weapons and hand-to-hand combat, teaching combat and tactics. They show villagers how to protect themselves. The ones with the gift have to learn all they can do with it. Veterinary medicine. I think that's most of it. And they learn all of this? The girl asked, shocked. The Chimera laughed. They do their best. They have to. At the end of fall, they go to groups in the field to start their trial year. If they survive, and most do these days, they're assigned a permanent group. Why? Were you thinking of going for a rider after all? Not anymore, Jane said emphatically. Anua grinned. I have trouble seeing you play soldier, even so odd a soldier as the riders turn out. Later, tucked into bed next to Mary's, Jane thought Anua was probably right. It must be hard having to account for every minute of the day as the trainees did. Why, she'd just never get to meet any new animals. Dozing off, she woke abruptly, her feeling trapped. At first, she didn't even remember where she was. Sitting up, she looked around. The 5 girl trainees were in their beds, asleep. The barracks were silent. If she didn't get some air, she'd suffocate. A window opened over her bed. She pried the shutters apart in time to hear a watchman's distant cry. The midnight hour and all is well. Her bed was too soft after so much sleeping on the ground. She cursed under her breath and took the blankets and pillows to the floor. That at least was firm, and the air was cooler too. She waited for sleep again. Mary turned over and said clearly, "But I love to ride." Jane sat up to peer at her. The girl was fast asleep. She lay back. The badger's claw weighed heavy on her chest. As she turned onto her side, the thong half choked her. She eased it and closed her eyes. Sheets and blankets rustled. The blonde girl who had snubbed her in the baths snored. Another tossed and turned for what seemed like hours before she settled. Outside, Jane heard a dog's bark. A headache grew in her temples. She missed having animals close by. At home, she'd had a ground floor room. Even in winter, she'd left the shutters open a crack. She never slept cold. Her friends always kept her warm. Disgusted, she grabbed her breeches from the chest in front of her bed. Her traveling gear was there, including her bedroll. It was the work of a second to dress and stuff her feet into boots. With her bedroll under her arm, she slipped downstairs and outside. The night air was a relief. She inhaled a sense of field and forest happily. Feeling sleepy and content, she crossed the open pasture. The tree that had sheltered the shy ponies that afternoon was there, the ground underneath mercifully free of manure. She spread out her bedroll and, already half asleep, crawled in. Cloud lay down to support her back. Someone, a pony she didn't know, lipped the foot of her covers. This is much better, Jane said. Good night, everybody. Falling asleep, she knew the 3 ponies had come to stand nearby and keep her company. In her dream, she walked down the road with Anua. Instead of ponies, they led people, the trainees. in chains. The night air was thick and sour, and marsh creatures made an incredible noise. The noise stopped abruptly, cut off. Anya halted. What's that? A stench fell on them in waves. Stormwings, Dane cried. She was awake and sitting up. Dawn shone between clouds in the east. The ponies milled nearby, restless and afraid. She drew a deep breath, feeling air pour into her chest like syrup. Lurching to her feet, she peered overhead. The sky was empty, but that meant nothing. They were coming. She dragged her boots on and ran from the building. The ponies ran with her. "Oh, the barracks!" she yelled, knowing she was too far away. "Riders!" On the second floor, a window was open. Her own. "Miri! Aniwa, wake up!" A tousled head appeared. "Dane, what's wrong?" Miri yelled. "Get Aniwa!" Dane screamed. Tell her stormwings are coming." She gasped for breath. At her back, she felt the wrongness surge. Miri vanished from the window. The girl turned, knowing she could never reach the barracks in time. They rose from the trees, the sun's first thin rays striking off metal wings. The familiar stink fell over her. Zane Bitterclaws led her flock, homing in on Dane. "Kill it!" she screeched. Her left eye was black and oozing ruin. "Kill this beast!" More than 50 stormwings stooped to attack. Cold with terror, Dane crouched against the ground. Cloud reared, ordering the Stormwing Queen to come down and fight like a horse. Steel claws groped for her as the mare struck the creature with her hooves. The ponies crowded around Dane, lunging at the Stormwings when they came too close. "Goddess, Horse Lords, get me out of this and I'll never, ever sleep without a bow again," she promised. Dahoy raced into the field with a pack of hounds, all of them as big as he was. More dogs followed, baying. Seeing rocks nearby, 3 of them as big as her fist, Dane grabbed them. Her first struck Zane Bitterclaw square in the nose. "There, you monster!" she yelled, shaking her fist at the Stormwings. "Come close, I can do it again!" The little dog that came with the hounds wove in and out of the pony's hooves to bring her more ammunition. Black fire filled with silver lights wrapped around the Stormwing. The creature struggled, trying to throw it off. The fire crept into its mouth and blew it apart. More clouds of black fire chased Stormwings to kill them. Darkmoon came, saddled and trailing his reins. He leapt to seize a Stormwing by the leg. Shaking his prize like a terrier, he snapped its neck. Other warhorses followed. Behind them ran Sarge in only a breechclout, armed with his fistful of javelins. He threw the first with a yell. Dane gaped when a Stormwing dropped, trying to drag the weapon from his chest. The black man fixed on a new target and waited for his best shot, as calm as he'd been at lunch. Each time he threw, a Stormwing went down. Anya raced into the field in her nightgown, her small bow and quiver in her hands. She had an arrow on the string. Lining up her shot, she dropped the Stormwing that was her target. Zane Bitterclaws saw the Chimera and screeched her triumph as she attacked. Dane yelled. Half the animals went to Anya, ringing her as the others ringed Dane. More horses and dogs leapt the fence to cover Sarge. Purple fire, Alana's magic, appeared, weaving a net around a pair of attackers. They screamed and beat at it uselessly. It dragged them to the earth and the hounds. Thunder, that was more than a thunder, pealed. The dogs howled. Dane clapped her hands over her smarting ears. The Stormwings shrieked, trying to do the same with their steel feathers. Blue lightning darted from the top of the field, consuming each Stormwing it struck. Near the fence, a bearded man in shirts and breeches was the source of the blue fire. It shone around him and pooled in his hands. Beside him was Alana, dressed as he was, for riding. Mimere was there too, in what looked like a nightshirt. Fire lashed from their hands, purple for the lioness, black for Numair, to cut the enemy in two. Zene spoke in her odd language and began to climb. Those that were able followed. A wall of their own fire wrapped around them, coloring them scarlet with an edge of gold light. The bearded man threw a fistful of blue. The red shield consumed it, but the man continued to hurl bolts until the monsters were specks in the sky. Dane's knees buckled from exhaustion and shock. Numair came down the rise, looking as tired as when she had first seen him as a man. "I said I'd see you again," he joked, leaning on the tree. She grinned at him. "You timed it perfect." Dark Moon and the other horses, ponies and hounds sat where they were, trembling with nerves. That's a weird phrasing, because horses don't really sit like that. Many were cut and bleeding, but miraculously, none were dead. Just full dog sitting. It just plumps down. Their hind legs don't even bend that way to allow them to sit quite like that either. The bearded man crouched beside a Stormwind corpse. He must have discovered the smell. He sneezed and put a hand over his nose. Alana and Anua went to him, Anua leaning on Tahoe for support. The liver chestnut and an iron grey horse nuzzled Sarge, making sure he was in one piece. Dane giggled and found she was getting the same treatment from Cloud. Numair offered Dane his hand. Cloud supported her on her free side, and the stranger mare let Numair prop himself on her. "The trainees usually wait till they're away from the palace before starting any wars," Numair told her. "The nobles will complain you got them out of bed." Dane looked up at him, worried. "Will I get in trouble?" Sarge had heard. He laughed. "Let them complain. It's good for them to be up in time for breakfast." Why isn't that working? What? Why isn't that working? Or maybe it's just... Coding? Weird. Yeah, that's... Huh. Well, sound effects aren't working right now from my soundboard. I don't know why. So annoying. I think there's an update for it. I just haven't installed yet. I'd seen on earlier, but maybe that's why. When she was calmer, she thanked the dogs, horses, and ponies who had come to her rescue. Only when the men who worked in the palace stables and kennels arrived to retrieve the charges did she return to the rider barracks. Should I go help them? She asked Anya as she cleaned up. Some of the animals were hurt. They'll need stitching and bandaging. Calm down, the woman said. There's a sorcerer attached to each of the stables and kennels to do any healing. Your animals will be fine. Dane followed her to breakfast, envious. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? To be able to wave her hands and put an end to a creature's hurts? Evan and Miri besieged her with questions as she joined them. Why was she in the field? Hadn't she been scared? Why did the animals fight for her and Anua? She answered as well as she could, but when Pedrak and Ferrant came to ask the same things, she felt embarrassed. After breakfast, Starge told the trainees to report to the horse meadow. For cleanup, Dean helped curate and clear a ground floor storeroom, freeing it to serve as her bedroom. Its best feature was a door to the outside she could leave open. Other than that, it was tiny, just big enough to hold a bed, a storage chest, a chair, and a small table. That afternoon, she helped the trainees settle and ride their new mounts. By the time everyone took their day's end bath, she was exhausted. She was content. At supper, she just to listen to her new friends talk. Afterward, as the trainees got ready for the night's lessons, Anua beckoned. What's up? Dane asked. Khmer led her to a room across the hall. There's someone who'd like to meet you. She opened the door. I brought her, she announced, following Dane aside. Are we late? I already forgot that. That still works. It's just the sampler that doesn't work for some reason. How long is... time is it? Morse code. Yes. Definitely. I'm just seeing whether the bleep buttons still worked or not.
And the effects still work.
It's just the sampler that doesn't work. I don't know why. Beep beep. Beep 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 beep. Okay, what time is it? 20 after 20 to 11. Let's do one more chapter. Okay. Chapter 5. Wild Magic. Seated at the table was the bearded man Tane had seen that morning. I just got here, he said in a deep, gentle voice. I took the liberty of ordering refreshments from the cooks, by the way. Close up, he was a sight to wring any female heart. His close-cropped hair and beard were blue-black, his eyes sapphire blue, his teeth white against the blackness of his beard. Dane gulped. She felt 10 feet tall and clumsy. Her face was probably breaking out in pimples as she looked at him. He got to his feet and smiled down at her. You must be Dane. You may not remember me from before. You were busy. Looking up into those eyes, the girl felt her heart melt like butter in the sun. No, sir, I remember. You threw blue lightning. He held a chair out for her. Sit down, please. She obeyed. I was glad when he sat again. Having him behind her was wonderful but terrifying. What if she had forgotten to scrub the back of her neck? The cook entered with a tray loaded with cakes, fruit, and a pitcher of juice. Placing it on the table, he bowed to the man. Your Majesty? Nope. Exactly what we need, the stranger told him. My thanks. The cook bowed again and made his escape. Dane gaped at her host. You're the king? She cried, belatedly remembering she had to bow or kneel or something. She jumped to her feet. Jonathan. King Jonathan grinned. It's alright. Please sit. Otherwise, good manners say I have to get up again, and I'm tired. She sat, trembling. This is a very strange country, she told herself, not for the first time. Back home, you couldn't pay a noble to speak to a commoner. The king sucked at a cake and bit into it. Wonderful, he said with his mouth full. The riders eat better than I do. It just seems as if we do. You don't have 6 footmen asking if you're sure you don't want a taster. Anua teased. She poured juice out for all of them. King Jonathan snorted. Don't remind me. He looked at Dane. Seers can tell, sometimes, if the immortals will attack a place. You, however, are the first I know of to sense them nearby. Are there seers or fortune tellers in your family? He smiled at her. Just at her. She'd tell them anything for another smile. Ma was a hedge witch, Your Honor. She had the gift for birthing, healing, protection spells. Not as good as Anya was. She was best with plants. She could never see anything in any future things, though. Did she have the gift from her family? He asked. She nodded, fiddling with the lacing of her shirt. All the girls in her family was healers but me. She swallowed a throat lump, remembering how disappointed Ma had been that Dane couldn't follow in her steps. What of your father? His voice was kind, but the question hurt. The king saw it in her face and said gently, I'm sorry, but I must know. Your father was a peddler or a vagabond. Perhaps he sired other children with your ability. He can use more people like you. Why, sir, your majesty, that is. Winged horses were seen in Serene this winter. The grimness of his eyes caught and held her. Griffins nest in the cliffs of the Copper Isles. There were spydrens throughout the hill country this spring. Winged horses? Griffins? Where do they come from? Do you know? Divine realms, the home of the gods. 400 years ago, powerful mages locked the immortals into them. Only the greatest gods have been able to leave. Until now. An arm crossed Dane's vision to pick up a cake. Numair took an empty seat, and the king went on. Our neighbors, Gala, Scanra, Tisane, report unicorns, giant birds, even winged people as small as wrens. We are plagued by monsters, ogres, and trolls. He jumped his fingers on the table. It's interesting that a weak mage like Cynthia could send rare creatures like Stormwings after you. Where did he get such power? As far as we know, he had only one secret worth protecting. He was dealing with Karthak. Karthak's another country? Dane asked, blushing for her ignorance. Across the inland sea, Numair said. They're desperate. Their crops failed 2 years in a row. Not enough rain, and tornadoes that ripped up the fields. There were food riots in the capital last winter. The Emperor needs good farmland, and we're the closest targets. Karthak has the university, its school for mages, and its library. The same library used by the mages who sealed the divine realms. The king looked at Numair. I think the Karthaki mages found those spells. Numair was rolling a cake into a ball. And the spell to compel immortals to obey humans. How else could Cynthia get Stormwings to chase me? We have nothing like those spells, Giant Jonathan told Dane. Cynthia's papers vanished. We're searching our own libraries, but it might take months. In the meantime, the warnings for tellers give us aren't enough. If we could send those with your ability to send immortals to our villages and towns, we could better protect our people. If we can find your father. It'd come back to that. She shook her head, humiliated. Dane? It was Anya who had given her trust and work that she loved. She owed this woman at least an answer. She looked down. I don't know who he is. It's my name, Sarastri, Sarah's daughter. Only bastards are named for their mothers. She spat out the hated word, but its taste stayed on her tongue. Why don't you know? She didn't look up to see who had asked. Ma never told me. She never told anybody. She kept saying, someday, someday. Do you know anything? Anya rested a hand on Dane's shoulder. She fought to get herself under control. It was Beltane. They light fires and couples jump over the embers when they burn down. So they'll have babies in the coming years, she thought. But she wasn't going to say that. We do the same thing, the king remarked. Dane looked at him, startled. You never jumped over no embers, she accused before she knew what she was saying. The others laughed. She ducked her head to hide her blush. The ruler takes part in all great feasts to show that respect for the gods, Jonathan told her gravely. His eyes danced. Bayet and I do it every year. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. He patted her knee. I didn't think you were. Go on. Ma wasn't sweet on anybody, so she went walking in the wood alone. She met someone. I used to think it was a man that was already married, but when I asked last year, she said no. I don't look like anyone from Snowsdale. Most of them are blonde and blue-eyed. Beings we're so near Scanra and all. The king sat back with a sigh. Well, it was an idea, he said to no one in particular. I'll help if I can, she said, knowing that she had disappointed them. I just don't know what I could do, and the warnings aren't that exactly. I know something wrong's coming, but I knew that much about the rabid bear. A rabid bear? The king asked in horror and awe. Mythros, that's not something I'd ever want to see. Dane smiled. I didn't want to see him either, sir. I just got to. Did you get the identical sensation from the bear as you got with the Stormwings or the Spydrins? Asked Numair. Oh no, it was different. Bad, but in a brown kind of way. In a what? Anu asked. Well, animals. I think of them in colors sometimes. She topped her head. To me, bears feel brown. Only this one had red and black lights. Very sick he was. I get the monsters as colors too, but they're gold with black and green lights in them. I never felt any real creature as gold. I told you she has magic, the mage told the king triumphantly. No, she retorted, jumping to her feet. Didn't Ma test me and test me? Don't you think I'd have grabbed at magic if I had it? Just to please Ma? Easy, little one. The king put a hand on her arm, guiding her back into her chair. Numair believes, and I agree. You have magic. You may have no gifts, but there are other magics. Wild magics. Bizarre tribes use one kind to unite their people. The Doi read the future with another. There are creatures we call elementals, whose very nature is composed of wild magic. Dane frowned. Miri told me the sea people know about it. Some of them use it to talk to fish and dolphins? Exactly. From what your friends say, the king nodded to Anua and Numair. Your wild magic gives you a bond with animals. Your mother might not have recognized it. Only a few people know it even exists. Dane frowned. Can't you see it on someone? Like them with a gift and see it on other folks that have it? I can, Numair said. And you do. Dane stared at him. Jonathan said, he's perhaps the only living expert on wild magic. Dane scowled at Numair. You never mentioned this on the road. He smiled. If you were trying to get a deer to come to you, would you make any sudden noises? Her scowl deepened. That's different. I'm no deer. Jonathan took Dane's hand. Will you let Numair help you study wild magic? It may help expand your awareness of the immortals, for one thing. Wouldn't it be easier to tell creatures to obey you? Aniwa added. All the way here you coaxed the ponies to mind you. You're dominant. You proved that on the stallion the day you and I met. Why prove it to each pony in the herd if you could do it all just once, never again? Dane, something in Numair's voice made her look at him, and only him. At the expression in his dark eyes, she even forgot that the king still held her hands. I can teach you to heal. Animals? It came out as a squeak. You mean, like Ma did humans? How do you know if I can? Because I saw you do it once. That wasn't Numair. It was Aniwa. At the marsh. After the fight, you were holding a bird, and you fainted. Remember? Dane nodded. I was looking right at an owl with his head almost cut off. The wound healed. He flew away. So did a lot of birds that shouldn't have been able to fly. I think it happened because their knee just pulled the healing out of you. Khmer nodded to Numair. He can teach you to do it. Teach you to heal of your own will, without burning yourself up till you faint. All her life she had splinted, sewed, bandaged. Most of her patients had mended, but some had not. She felt the badger's claw heavy in her chest. To fix her friends, like he'd fixed himself after giving the claw to her. She looked at the king. I still think it sounds crazy, but I'll try. He squeezed her hands. You will? He asked quietly. I'm in love, she thought, and nodded. Oh wait, I hired on with Aniwa for the summer. That isn't a problem, said Numair. The trainees will be going to Pirate Swoop. I live near there. Why don't I just go along? When the king frowned, he added, Eggs bones, John. There's nothing I can do here right now that you don't have 100 other mages doing already. If I work with Dane, maybe I can devise a spell to warn people that immortals are coming. The king made a face. You just say that so I'll let you go. You have too many mages eating their heads off around here as is, Aniwa pointed out. It's not as if you can't contact him if something comes up. Whose side are you on? The king asked. The woman grinned. He sighed and looked at Dane once more, squeezing her hands before he let them go. Thank you. He got up. Aniwa, Numair, keep me posted? I nodded. I'd best go then. I have to dance with the Carthaki ambassador's wife. Numair grinned at him. Wear iron shoes, Your Majesty. Dane said, Excuse me, Your Majesty? The king looked back at her. Yes, my dear? No one had ever called her that. She blushed and managed to say, I'm sorry I can't help more with the sensing, my da and all. Jonathan de Conte smiled at her. If I've learned anything else as king, it's been I never know when someone will be able to help me. I have a feeling you'll be the most welcome in this realm. For Aladane Sarasri. And he was gone. Which was really just as well because it was suddenly hard for her to breathe. Aniwa patted her back. He has this effect on most of us, if it helps. Numair rose, nibbling on one last cake. No time like the present to begin. Dane, will you get Cloud, please? I'll meet you by the stables. Dazed, she went out and called her mare. The night so fine, Cloud had asked to stay with the free ponies instead of being stabled with the trainees' mounts. She came racing over at Dane's summons and leapt the fence rather than wait for the girl to open the gate. Overwhelmed by the day's events, Dane buried her face in Cloud's mane. It smelled of night air, ferns and horse. Things are so weird here, she whispered. You ever hear of wild magic? They say I have it. You have something and you know it. Who cares what name it is? Or did you really think the wild creatures visit because they like humans? But magic? Did you call me to worry about the names of things? If you did, I'm going back. Just salt lick over by that big rock I want to taste. Dane? Nymeria and Anya were coming. Good, you have her. Nymeria said, if you can persuade her to come with me, I'd like to check your range with an animal you know well. What do you mean my range? She asked. I've observed that when you say that you hear an animal, you actually mean hearing in your mind, not with your ears. I want to see how far I can walk with Cloud before you stop hearing her. But how will you know? The girl asked reasonably. Should I have her tell you when we lose touch or something? No! Anya said and laughed. Dane, knowing Cloud, she'd do that by kicking him. Nymeria will do a speech spell with me. You and I will sit here and you tell me what you hear from Cloud. And when you stop hearing her. If Cloud will do it, amended Nymeria. Of course she will. Won't you? The girl asked Cloud silently. Nymeria switched her tail, thinking it over. Dane didn't rush her. Sometimes, if she was too eager, Cloud would refuse just to keep her in her place. Very well, the pony trotted off down the fence away from the palace. I think you're to follow her, Dane told the mage with a grin. Nymeria sighed and trotted off after the pony. Only one of us can lead here, and that has to be me, he called. Anya and Dane hoisted themselves to the top rail of the fence. Anya held her palm out between them. In it glowed a ball of ruby fire. Nymeria will take a moment to set up his end of the spell. Anya, if the king's on the bad side of these Carthags, why does he have to dance with the ambassador's wife? Politics, Anya said. You don't have to mess with that. Thanks be to Father Storm and Mother Rain. It means you sit down to dinner with the enemies and ask how their children are. Aren't we at war, then? Nah, the woman replied. We aren't at war until both sides sign a paper saying it's a war. The Carthagi Emperor can raid us and send monsters against us, but there's no war. Yet. That's crazy, Dane said, and Anya nodded. They waited, enjoying the night. Uphill the palace glittered, its lights blurring the stars overhead. Downhill lay the forest, dark, moist, and quiet. The free ponies had come to graze near the two women. Their soft movements a comforting sound. In the distance, the girl heard the callings of pack wolves. Did I hear them on the road? She wondered. Not so close, that's for certain. I wonder if they miss me, Brookfang, and Rattail, and the others. Listen to these wolves. Is it Hun song? No, pack song. They're just singing to be doing it, not to celebrate the kill. I could just run, dive into the forest, go to them, be Hun's sister and one with the pack. Dane? Dane! Anya was shaking her with one hand. Anya, what's wrong? Anya, what's wrong? Chimera's voice came from the fire in the Chimera's other hand. Great goddess, I almost forgot who I am. I'm fine, she told Anya, forcing herself to sound calm. Can you hear them? Wolves? Of course. Anya replied. The pack had sensed her. The voices were approaching through the trees. The pony snorted anxiously. huddling near the woman on the fence. "I'll be right back," Dane said, and jumped into the meadow. "Calm down and stay put," she ordered the herd. She walked until she was halfway between the trees and the fence, knowing the ponies would not come closer to the wolves. "Go away," she yelled. "There are hunters here, and dogs. Go!" There was that other way to speak to them, but she didn't dare try it, not after she had almost forgotten. Just listening to them. The calling stopped. They heard a human. They'd heard a human and run. It was against their own dread or judgment to approach human dwellings in the first place. Dane returned to Anua, glad that the night had hid the sparkle of tears on her cheeks. "I'm too tired for this. I'm sorry. It hit me all of a sudden." Anua spoke into the red fire into her hand, then closed her fingers on it. The globe vanished. "Go to bed then. Tamora will let Cloud into the meadow. I'll get someone to come watch the herds, in case the wolves return." Dane watched her go. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though only the ponies could hear. They crowded around, needing reassurance after hearing wolves. She couldn't leave them scared. It took her several minutes to pat and soothe them into calmness once more. It wasn't their fault the wolves thought they'd heard a wolf sister in the night. She was climbing the fence out of the meadow when Numair and Cloud arrived. Cloud came right up to her, sniffing Dane all over for wolf smell. "Are you all right?" the man asked, panting as he rested a hand on Dane's shoulder. "I should have remembered you might be tired after this morning. I get carried away sometimes. I forget not everyone has my academic enthusiasm." She stared at him, patting Cloud. He was a sorcerer. He'd cut his eye teeth on the impossible. He'd understand if anyone did, she thought, and opened her mouth to tell him. "Evening, sir. Miss." The burly man climbed over the fence, holding a crossbow out of harm's way. Two big dogs wriggled through the rails and came over, tails wagging to sniff Dane. "Mistress Anua tells me wolves are near the forest rim tonight. Must be a new pack. Most of them know to stay clear of the palace. Me and me lads will keep watch for a bit, scourge 'em like." Dane scratched the ears of both lads. Dogs almost as big as Tahoy. "Run, pack brothers," she called to the wolves under her breath, hoping they'll somehow hear her. "Run and keep running. There are hunters here." She and Numair said goodnight to the man, and Numair walked her to her new room in the barracks. She let herself in, waving to him as he climbed the hill to the palace. The chance to tell him the truth had gone. Just as well, she told herself as she changed into her nightshirt. What he don't know won't hurt him. Or me. As she was crawling under the covers, 3 palace cats entered through the partly open door and climbed in with her. Dane smiled as they made themselves comfortable. It would have been nice talking with Miri after lights out, but this was better. Miri didn't know how to purr. She didn't realize her new room was beneath the boys' dorm until thunder the next morning crashed through the ceiling overhead. "Trainees, turn out!" She sat up, humbling cats right and left and scaring an owl out the door. That thunder had been Sarge's voice. It must have have an equally powerful effect on the male trainees. They were dressed and stumbling blindly on their way to the stable by the time Dane had pulled on her breeches. Neither Anua nor Buri, who slept in the girls' dorm, could roar, but whatever they did seemed just as effective. The female trainees were just as quick down the stairs. Once the stabled ponies were groomed and fed, the humans performed the same chores for themselves. "You'll work afoot," Anua told Dane as they ate. "Keep an eye on what's low, hooves to hawks. But if you see a trainee misusing an animal, or a problem with attack, don't be afraid to sing out. The rest of us will be mounted, so you'll see things we miss. She clapped Dane on the shoulder with a grin as she got up. We'll have some fun. Becca, enough. Going to the meadow while everyone else saddled up, Dane was startled to find the queen already there, patting a savage-looking yellow dun mare. Stu and the trainees, Anua and Buri arrived on ponies, and Sarge joined them on horse. A strongly built liver chestnut gelding. The 4 mounted officers put the trainees through a morning's hard work, trying the ponies at different gaits. Walk, trot, canter, gallop, with and without saddles. After lunch, everyone switched to his spare mount and went through it all over again. Dane soon learned a polite "excuse me" went unheard. She also learned she wasn't shy if she thought a pony had picked up a stone or had strained a muscle. By morning's end, she had developed a bellow. Not as shattering as Sarge's, perhaps, but loud enough for her purposes. Numair found her after lunch. "How's it going?" he asked, leaning on the metal fence next to her. When she opened her mouth, a croak emerged. She cleared her throat and tried again. "Fine. It's all fine." "I was wondering about that range-finding experiment." He squinted up at the sky. "You're too busy to try it now, I suppose." Cloud trotted over to them. "Tell the stork man I will go with him." Numair looked oddly at Dane as the girl laughed at the pony's name for him. When she caught her breath, she said, "No, don't ask me. You really don't want to know." To the pony, she said, "But there's no hearing spell for me to talk to him with. I can't ask anyone. Not now. I shouldn't even really try it myself. Not if I'm to earn my pay with these people." The pony stamped impatiently. "You act as if you're the only clever one. I will tell the stork man when I can no longer hear you." Dane relayed the pony's offer to Numair. "You mean she'll undertake the test situation without dealing through you? Can she do that?" he asked, fascinated. "She says she can. I know she always finds me if one of us wanders off." "All right then." He bowed to the pony. "Lead on." As they walked off, Dane heard Numair say, "And no biting." The trainees left the stable with their spare ponies, followed by the queen and their other officers. Soon Dane was busy. She forgot about Cloud and Numair. The afternoon followed the morning's pattern, with one difference. The officers were still fresh, but the pace had begun to tell on the trainees. "Come on, Evan!" yelled the queen, circling the player at a gallop. "Raiders won't give you a break for lunch, laddie." "I don't want to see air between butt and saddle, trainee!" Sarge roared at Miri's right heels. "You ride that gelding like he's a separate creature. He ain't. He's a part of you. So connect the parts again." Anua swooped down on a brodette, Zelda, and scooped the bow out of her hand. Circling back, she told the girl, "The enemy might do that with an axe. Every time you have to concentrate on your mount, you give a foe a chance." "Your stirrup's too long," Dane yelled at one of the men. "Stop and fix it." He didn't seem to hear. Within seconds, Buri slung low on her pony's side, came up under to grab the stirrup in question. The trainee's pony wheeled away from the Khmer. Her rider, Taris, slipped off and down. Buri righted herself at her pony's back and looked at Taris. "Your stirrup was too long. Trainee, fix it." She rode off calmly. "I'm sorry," Dane said as the young man struggled out of the mud. She gave him a hand. "I tried to warn you." He grinned at her, his small, pointed nose quivering like a rabbit's. "I figured I'd fix it the next break. Next time, I'll do it right off." He looked at his behind and the back of his legs, where he sported a mud coat. "It's an ill wind that blows no good. With a mud pack like this, my skin will be lily soft." He fixed the stirrup and mounted up again. Dane was tired when it came time to stable the trainees' mounts at day's end, but she knew she couldn't be as tired as the others. They moved stiffly as they groomed and fed their ponies, without joking or arguing as the officers and Dane corrected them. Only when each pony had been tended and the trainees had retreated to the baths did the queen say farewell and trudge up the long slope to the palace. She had groomed her mounts while the trainees groomed theirs, still finishing with enough time to criticize their work. She does this every day? Dane asked Bury, as she followed the rider officers to the barracks. The stocky Khmer nodded. In the fall and winter, she can't be out in the field. That's the social season. She has to travel around being queen. She works with the trainees to make up for when she can't be with the groups. But there's times she'll leave a ball or dinner to go to a rider group in trouble, Anya remarked. Remember the pink tissue dress? Ray rolled her eyes. 300 gold nobles that thing cost, just for cloth and sewing. That's not counting pearls in the collar and cuffs. Gray ones, almost perfectly matched in size. Dane whistled in awe. She couldn't imagine a garment that cost so much. She couldn't even imagine what such a dress would look like. What happened? 2 years ago, Bury said, the 5th Rider Group chased outlaws into a swamp and got bogged down. Hyatt was visiting some earl nearby. Dane winced. And the dress? The two Khmer shook their heads as they led way to the baths. What happened to the group and the outlaws? Dane asked as they undressed. The Rider Group lost too. The outlaws didn't make it, but Thayet and the riders saved the village girls they'd kidnapped. Bury plunged into the heated pool, and the girl trainees yelped as a wave almost swamped them. Anya and Dane entered, more decorously. Bury surfaced and gasped. Thayet always said it was worth losing the dress. And the king wasn't mad? Dane wanted to know. Anya replied. He just told her next time, try to change clothes. It wasn't until supper that was almost over, and the mage had come to the mess hall door that Dane remembered he'd gone off to experiment with Cloud. Ready for lessons? He asked, sitting next to her. How was it this afternoon? She asked. We determined that your range, with Cloud at least, is 1.5 miles. It may be more or less than that with animals who haven't been exposed to you for a prolonged period of time. You make her sound like a disease, Evan commented with a slow laugh. Are we going to need healers or something? Ymir smiled. No. But Dane, have you found that animals you spend a lot of time with are, well, smarter than others? Smarter in a human sense? She played with her spoon. A friend of Ma's had said as much when she had nursed one of his falcons. Some of the local herdsmen liked her to train their dogs for that reason. Is it bad? No. How could it be? It doesn't make your animals less able to survive in the wild. Quite the opposite. Ymir took her food tray and stood. Come on, we're going for a walk. He took her tray and the servants who cleaned up. Jane rose with a sigh, tired muscles creaking. Mary winked. If you don't want lessons, I'll take them, the girl offered. He's cute. Gusto. Dane followed her teacher, shaking her head. Ymir was well enough, as men went, but he wasn't the king. 1 sec. Rosto down! Sorry, Rosto, lights going on top of my computer tower. The tower, top of my tower is the fan intake for my CPU heater, so CPU cooler, I should say, not heater. Oh, oh, Rosso isn't in these books yet. Or should I say anymore? Because technically, the character Rosso is from the past. Okay. The mage steered her out of the barracks and through the horse meadow gate. In silence, they crossed the wide swath of green, letting their eyes get accustomed to the night. They had to stop every few feet when Dane greeted the grazing ponies and her horses. Each time she patted them and excused herself, saying she would visit with them another time. Horses stayed back as the man and the girl went into the forest along a trail. There was just enough light to follow it without stumbling into trees. Here, away from the torches of the palace, the dark-clad mage turns into a large shadow, a slightly ominous one. The trail opened into a grassy clearing. The animals, who normally would have been drinking from the large pond in its center, had fled on hearing them. But Dane could feel their eyes. Overhead, a bat squeaked. Have a seat. Numair motioned to the rock near the pond. She obeyed, a little nervously. He came up behind her to rest a hand on her shoulders. I'm going to use my gift, but through you. You must understand that. If I did this with the king or Elena, they wouldn't see what you will. If you say so. The hair on the back of her neck was standing up, and she was quivering. It wasn't fear exactly, because she wasn't afraid of him. On the other hand, the dark was filled with strange currents that flowed into and out of the presence at her back. He put his fingers to her temples. Now, do just as we do when we're meditating. A soft voice over her head commanded. Slow, deep breath. Inhale. He inhaled with her. Hold it. Let it go. Carefully. Again. In. And out. Eyes closed, she breathed at his command. Her mind filled with vines of sparkling light wrapped in darkness. Or was it the other way around? When the space behind her eyes was full, the magic spilled out of her. She felt it ripple through the clearing, soaking grass and trees. It dripped into the pond, following the water into the ground. Open your eyes. His whisper seemed to come from inside her head. She obeyed. Clearing, so dark before, was veined with shimmering fibers. All that was green by day grew from the emerald threads now. Odd, she reached down and plucked a blade of grass. The needle of green fire that formed its spine flared and it went dark. She gasped, remorseful. I didn't mean to. Hush, Numair said. Look at the earth. A pale bronze mist lay at the piles of dead matter under the trees. She let the blade of grass fall. Its spine turned the same dim bronze as it touched the ground. It returns to the goddess, she whispered. The stone beneath her and the other rocks she could see were veined with dark silver. An owl nearby, a branch, gleamed with a tracery of copper fire. A vole rubbed beneath the bush near the sprig. A point of copper light. Jane looked at her hands. They were laced through with strands of reddish light, almost as if her veins had the power to glow. Intertwined with the red were strands of copper fire. She looked at the owl, at the vole, and her hands. All the same shade of copper. Half twisting, she managed to see a part of Numair. He too was laced with red fire. In addition, a white, pearly glow flickered over his skin, like a veil. She recognized the light Tahoe had shown her once. Sit straight, the mage ordered her quietly. I have to remain in contact with you to keep the spell going. She obeyed. I wish I could see this by myself. You can learn. The vision is in your mind. Like the power to heal. Just remember what your magic feels like and practice reaching for it. Reaching for it how? Something between them shifted, and she knew she looked at herself, looked into herself. At her center, deep inside, welled a spring of copper fire. She called, and a slender thread rose from it to her. She caught it, opened her eyes, and threw it out to the owl. You don't need the hand motion, Numair said. In magic, the thought is the deed. You want it bad enough, she added. That's what Moss said. She was right. The owl glided down through the air. She held out her arm and it perched, looking her over with solemn eyes. He was a barn owl, a little more than a foot tall, with a white ghost face of his kind and a powerful grip. You called to me, Night Sister? His voice was cold and precise. It was also clearer than the voice of any animal she'd spoken to, except clouds. Only to greet you, Silent One, she replied with respect. You don't need to say it aloud, Numair commented. Jane shook her head. Can we do this a little bit at a time? She asked, not looking away from the owl. Please? She felt him smile. Whatever you say. The owl ruffled his feathers in disapproval. It is not for the nestling to decide the proper time for lessons, he said, and flew off. I heard that, Numair remarked. He's right, and it's time to stop. Hey. Sorry, Rasta was at it again. The ending of the spell felt to Dane as if she were a water skin and the water was trickling out. She opened her eyes. How do you feel? He asked. She didn't reply. She felt a tickling in her mind, a feeling similar to the one caused by stormwings, only faint and far more pleasant. She looked around for its source. It came from the pond. A tiny figure, not much bigger than the owl, glittering with scales, was levering itself out of the water. Numair saw what she was looking at. He spoke a word Dane couldn't understand, and the clearing filled with bright lights. The little female creature in the pond whistled shrilly and vanished into the water again. Her hair was blue, Dane said it calmly. She had used up her excitement for the day. She was all over scales, and her hair was blue. Undine, Numair whispered. His dark face glowed with awe. I think we just saw an Undine. A water sprite. He walked over to the pond and knelt beside it. I'm sorry, little one. Won't you come up again? Maybe if you doused the light? Dane recommended. She sat back down on her rock. Her knees felt weak. Oh, of course, he said something, and the clearing was dark once more. They waited until Dane was half asleep, but the Undine would not return. Finally, Numair gave up his vigil and roused the girl. I'll have to tell the king, he said, as she stretched. Or maybe not. She won't harm anyone. They're said to be incredibly shy of humans. I noticed, she said dryly. He produced a globe of light so they could see the trail. They were both tired, needed the help. See a water sprite, he murmured, steering her down the path. We live in marvelous times, my little magelet. What's a magelet? She asked and yawned. Nothing really. Well, little mage. Isn't that what you are? As they left the clearing, Dane saw movement out of the corner of her eye. Another tiny person, a green female, watched them go from the branch of a tall oak. She decided not to mention tree spites to Tamora just now. She wasn't sure that she liked being called Magelet. The next day passed in the same manner, driving the trainees morning and afternoon, with one difference. As if her time within the Indian's clearing had opened a door in her mind, Dane saw glimpses of copper fire in every furred and feathered creature to come near her. It was very distracting until she got used to it. Most alarming were the flashes in the corner of her eye, the ones that made her turn to look. "Why do you keep twitching?" the brunette Zelda wanted to know. "You look like you have a palsy." Dane glared at Zelda, but held her tongue. The older girl was like some people back home, never happy until she had something to complain about. Still, the comment was enough to make her guard herself so she wouldn't jump at this hint of copper light. She came to like seeing it. Her only regret was that copper was the only magical glitter that she saw. No blue or green threads, no bronze mists and pearly shimmers. She had a fresh shock that day when she saw Anua with the ponies. The same copper color threaded the Chimera's head and hands. "Why so surprised?" Tamora asked that night when Dane told him. They were on their way to the horse meadow once more. That's the Chimera term, horse-hearted. "Did you think Fayette would commission just anyone to obtain mounts? The riders depend on horses more than any other military company. Anua ensures that they have the best." "Does she know?" Dane asked. "Of course." He boosted himself up to sit on the top rail of the fence. "She doesn't have it enough that she needed training in it, like you. There are few people here with it. A man and his grandson in the palace mews. 2 sisters at the kennels. Some of the hostlers. Stefan, this chief hostler, has a lot of it. He breeds great horses. The extra large mounts many knights need to ride in combat. I trained him." Shaking her head, Jane sat on the rail beside him, looking at the animals grazing in the meadow. "And I only heard of all this 2 days ago." He tweaked her nose. "Being all of 13, of course you should be omniscient," he teased. "Now Magelet, to work." He pointed to a pony grazing by itself nearby, nearly 300 yards away. "All to it." She opened her mouth, and he clapped his hand over it. "Without sound." She glared at him. "Then how am I supposed to call to her?" she asked, his palm tickling her moving lips. "With your mind. One thing I've noticed is that you tend to be confused about how you speak to and hear animals. We're going to break you of the habit of assigning concrete manifestation to magical phenomena." "What?" "Believing you actually hear or speak with your body when all of it is done with your mind. Call that pony. That pony is a mare. Why can't I just talk to her?" He sighed. "The time may come when being heard will get you killed. Also, your mind needs discipline. If your thinking is more direct, then what you can do with your thoughts will happen more directly. Learn to focus your mind. Focus creates strength. Meditation helps you reach that same end. We're doing spring cleaning up here." He tapped her forehead with a long finger. "Once you put everything into its proper place, once you organize your mind, you'll be able to find what you want quickly. Now call her, please." Jane clenched her teeth and thought as loudly as she could. "Come here, please." Tamora continued to graze peacefully. "Think of the magic," Tamora said calmly. "Try again." An hour or so later, they gave up and went inside. Dane's head ached fiercely, and the pony had not come closer by so much as a step. "We'll keep practicing," Tamora said calmly. "Lucky me," she muttered, following him into her room. A large book lay on her writing table. What's this? She opened it to a colored page and gasped in awe. It was a precise drawing of the bones of a wild pig. It's a book on mammalian anatomy, he said, sitting her down on her bed. A book on what? He sighed. I keep forgetting you're not a scholar. Sorry. Anatomy is what's inside a body. Muscles, veins, organs, and so on. Mammalian refers to mammals. You know what they are. You just don't know the fancy term. Warm-blooded animals with hair-covered bodies that suckle their young are mammals. That's most of my friends, she said it quietly, turning page after page of drawings with fingers she had scrubbed on her shirt. Exactly. If you're to learn healing, you need to understand how animals are put together. I already know some. Here was the bear skeleton. Here are the veins and organs of the cat. Every drawing was done with an eye to the finest detail. This book will help you organize what you know and add to your present knowledge. She made a face. Why? My friends don't organize their minds. Everything they think about is all tumbled together, willy-nilly. For them, that's enough, he said patiently. As animals, they remember the past, only vaguely. They are unable to visualize the future, apart from the change of season. They have no comprehension of mortality, of their deaths. They don't learn from books or teachers, so they have no need to structure their minds in order to find what they learn. You, however, are human and different. If you do not find a way to organize your mind, at worst you might go mad. At best, you'll be stupid. She made a face. She didn't like the sound of either fate. With a sigh, she looked at the page before her. The artist had drawn a bat, his frame spread so she saw how bones fitted together. You'd best take this when you go. My friends come in every night. I wouldn't want it spoiled. The book is spelled against dirt and tearing. It's yours. I want you to use it, not admire it. It took a moment for her to realize what he'd said. Mine? She gasped. No, it's too valuable. The likes of me don't keep such things. Her fingers shook. She wanted it so much, but peasant girls didn't own books. He caught her hands, his eyes earnest. Dane, listen to me. He pulled her down to sit beside him. You're a student mage. You need books like this to do your work. I am your master. It's my duty. In this case, it's my pleasure to give you whatever books and scrolls I believe you require. To learn. Unless you don't want to learn? Huds, Bobs, of course I do. Good. Then get your book. We'll start at page 1. They ended it sometime later when Anya knocked to stuck her head in. We're about to meditate. Come on, if you're coming. Do we have to? Dane asked, closing the wonderful book. Spring cleaning, he replied, getting to his feet. She followed him to the rider's mess. He'd been surprised to learn that meditation was required of all trainees, not just gifted ones. They worked at it every night before they went to bed, along with their officers. Dane and Numair, whether we need it or not, Evan commented once, in a whisper. That day set the pattern for the next 3 weeks. It took Dane 6 days to learn how to deliberately call the nearest pony without using words. Numair then had her summon a pony farther away, but still within sight, until she could do that. Next, she had to call an animal from inside the barracks or stables, where she couldn't see it. Often that was Tahoy or one of the cats that slept in her room. She worked hard. Each task took less time to master. Anatomy lessons she swallowed in gulps. Every spare moment she had went into studying her beloved book and memorizing its contents. Meditation was the hardest. She did her best, wanting to control the copper fire that was her kind of wild magic. But clearing her mind was hard. Stray thoughts popped into her head. Something would itch, a muscle would cramp, and she would have to start over. Often she fell asleep. The best thing about meditating with the trainees was the knowledge that she wasn't the only one who was easily distracted or who dozed off. Slowly, they all grew used to their work. She saw it in the trainees before noticing it in herself. As their bodies hardened and this hard routine became habit, after 2 weeks, she was taken off watching them on foot and put to teaching archery, something even the officers had to work to beat her at. It wasn't until she saw that few trainees were falling asleep in the meditation that she realized she no longer fell asleep either. With practice, it got easier to learn to think of nothing at all. The deep breaths emptied her thoughts and quieted her body rhythms. Her mind learned to drift. She began to feel as if she had in the marsh when she had listened for the hawk. Is that what it is? She thought one night. Lying awake in bed, she grasped the badger's claw. I wish you'd come and tell me, she whispered, turning a curious look from the pine marten, who had arranged herself and her kits in the girl's blanket-covered legs. The badger heard. He did not answer the summons. Typical, Dane told the martens and went to sleep. And that is where we're gonna leave tonight. It was good. It was a good night. We actually got 2 chapters in 2 hours. Decent. It is 20 to midnight though. 20 minutes to midnight though, so it's time for bed and sleep. Take the dog out for one quick pee break. Oh, I think I didn't open the bot program that controls the pro. Sorry, he broke. Yeah, I forgot to open the program for him. Okay, let's see if I can find someone to send y'all to. I'm gonna send y'all to Scratch. I get to be smooth. It's gonna be weird. And I'll be too itchy when I go. Yeah. Don't It's gonna be painful too, I imagine too. I'm gonna send y'all over to Mander Monster, who is drawing some artwork of their character. Gonna wake me the heck up. I hope they're not breaking into your house to wax you. That would be awkward. Oh, Orange Cat, hello. How are you doing? I am gonna be stretching as soon as I get off stream. Not get off in that way, you perv. Okay, it is night time for me. Everyone have a good night. Whatever you gotta do to chill, right? True. If only it was that simple. Meds are bloody annoying. I did not get the libido I should have gotten with testosterone, I swear. Oh, let me give that back to you because I do not have the stream bot open. I don't have the throwing things open either. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I did open a lot of things. Okay. I'm gonna send y'all over to Mander Monster. You'll say hello. They're a friend. You can have the kids. I do not like kids. Have a good night. I'll see you on Discord, Foppin.